I think it's Scorsese's masterpiece. I think it's a masterpiece of modern cinema, and I think this is the one that will live, 100 years from now. This is the one people will come back to.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Foreplay. We are in the midst of our money shot arc right now. And what does that mean? It means that it's the reverse of our last arc, which was Spit Roast, which means we are picking a bunch of movies that we think are good. Each of us has selected one that also did very well at the box office. So both famous and profitable and hopefully enjoyable, as opposed to the last one where we were picking movies that may be dear to our hearts, but did not do well at the box office, nor are particularly great films. So we started this arc with me selecting Jurassic Park. The last episode was Thorne selecting The Godfather. And now we are here with Richard selecting another mafia movie, this one from 18 years later, Goodfellas, and Scorsese film, of course. And then our final one next week will be one that Roger Ebert put on his list of all-time great films, which is the classic Casablanca. So, Richard, why don't you give us an introduction to Goodfellas and why you selected this movie?
Yeah, so Goodfellas is the 1990 movie by Martin Scorsese. It was based on Nicholas Pileggi's book Wise Guy, which was the story about Henry Hill, who was a lifetime criminal who was a low-level mafioso. And it was one of the first times that really anyone had openly talked about the mafia in print. Obviously, that was something you didn't really do. We talked about it with Puzo. Puzo, when he was writing about it, he was writing about the kind of golden age of the mafia, the Sicilian mafia, the five families that originally came to America and kind of created these crime syndicates. This was the modern era. This was the modern era mafia in the sense that this was the criminal activity that was happening in modern America at the time that would still be contextually relevant to the people that were watching the movie and reading the book. Indeed, it goes right the way up into the 80s. The film released in 1990, the book before that. And so what it did was essentially it was the re-emergence of the great crime film. Hugely influential. For me, a perfect movie in every sense of the word. And the reason why I picked it is technically it's not a money shot because it didn't make like.
Well, it wasn't maybe in the same way that, I mean, so it's a little unfair because Jurassic Park and The Godfather were both literally the number one film ever in terms of revenue in their respective eras. And you can only pick so many movies like this, but it still made a tidy profit.
I mean, for a genre movie, especially, it did decent money at the box office. Interestingly enough, which we might talk about, it didn't have the staying power at the box office. It kind of exploded onto the scene, and then it kind of just like ebbed off and went away. And there was a lot of hand wringing about the extreme violence, which I think is really overblown. I actually don't think it's that violent a movie. Maybe for the time, 1990, it was shocking. Again, I'm not so sure. Is this any more violent than The Godfather? I don't know, actually. But anyway, so the reason I picked this is I think, first of all, it's good to remember that Martin Scorsese was an incredible filmmaker and made one of the greatest movies of all time. It also features, I mean, stellar performances from like everyone that's in it, probably career best for like most of the people in it, with maybe the exception of De Niro. It also has so many recognizable faces that have bit parts in this. The entire cast of The Sopranos, I think, apart from James Gandolfini's in this movie. It's for me, I think what's important about the film is that it didn't shy away from kind of showing in a lot of crime films, like so we talked about this on the previous episode, but in a lot of crime films in the 50s, crime could never pay. It could be glamorous, it could be a power fantasy. At the end, the villain absolutely had to die. Then we kind of went through a period of the like anti-hero in cinema, where, you know, if you were a criminal, it was okay for the bad guy to win sometimes, typically with like a twist or, you know, some kind of clever power fantasy. This was kind of what this movie did that I think was hugely influential was everyone in it is reprehensible on some level. Like everyone in it is dislikable. Everyone in it is selfish. Everyone in it is morally weak. Everyone in it is stupid. Everyone in it is violent and callous. And it sort of shows that, like, look, the world of organized crime is awful for everyone. The wives are ghastly in this. The wives are ghastly. The girlfriends are ghastly. Everyone who's involved in it is like just a terrible person. Some more than others, as we'll talk about Joe Pesci. I think what's just great about this film is it unequivocally shows you how actually unglamorous this world can be. And I just love that. It's like, yeah, there's great scenes, there's memorable moments, but you're under no illusions by the end that nobody wins and nobody deserves to win. And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about everything about this movie exudes class and thought, right from, changing it from Wise Guy to Goodfellas. Good. We're all good fellas. Very much not true. The movie is such a wonderful, like, modern parable almost about the kind of corrupting aspects of organized crime. And as I said, I believe in its construction. I think it's perfect. I think in terms of its construction, it might even be a better movie than The Godfather. And think about all the praise I heaped on that.
Well, we'll get to the Roger Ebert review because he actually thought this was better than The Godfather as well. I don't agree with that take, but
and listen, there is a lot to discuss. But look, I'll throw it over to you guys. Obviously, this was a movie we've all come to having seen it multiple times, I imagine. So what's your take on the film overall, having recently viewed it?
Well, I mean, it's still a great movie. I think what's interesting about this one is that watching it, obviously I hadn't watched either this movie or The Godfather in quite some time, and watching them back to back is a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
Especially because The Godfather is about the very top end, the dawn of one of the five families, whereas this also obviously takes place in New York, right? And is part of the five family system. But the difference is that this takes place at the very, very bottom of the totem pole instead of at the top, right? Basically, the made man is kind of the lowest official member of the family. And the way that these crime organizations were structured is that you have the Don at the top who has a bunch of capos or captains underneath him. And Paulie, the big shot in this one is only a capo, right? You never actually see the top of the crime tree here. And indeed, like, the aspiration is to become a made man, which is where we see Joe Pesci's character, Tommy. That's kind of the end of the film, is that he's going to be initiated. But that is really like the lowest official level that you can get to. And it takes the whole movie to even approach that point, right? And the other two guys who are in this, so Ray Liotta and Robert De Niro's characters can never be made men because they're not 100% Italian, right? They're either Irish or half Irish, in the case of Ray Liotta's character.
But Jimmy and I could never be made because we had Irish blood. It didn't even matter that my mother was Sicilian. To become a member of a crew, you've got to be 100% Italian so they can trace all your relatives back to the old country.
So, you are dealing with the low-level thugs here, and even they are making obscene amounts of money, and even they are really attracted to this lifestyle, but they're not really in the inner circle, as it were, and the highest level is still, kind of the equivalent of like mafia middle management.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually say I'll pick it up similarly, right? If to contrast with The Godfather, because obviously people will have watched that episode by the time we get to this one. I actually think that's a good jump-off point because, first of all, I pointed out on The Godfather episode, one of the things they try to do with the film The Godfather and The Godfather series that they in no way attempt to do with any of the Scorsese gangster films, Goodfellas, Casino, etc., is they try to class it up in The Godfather. They try to make it seem like on some fucked up level they have like a code of honor and, and this respect being shown. Whereas actually what you realise, I pointed out on that episode, is actually right beneath the cracks, though, it's seeping out that isn't the world they live in. Like I say on the point, there's even a reference I believe they intentionally do in this film, where in this film, Goodfellas, when he's at the scene where he is getting married and they have the bag with all the money in, she goes, "What about the bag with all the money?" And he goes, "Don't worry about that, like no one would rob that."
The bag. The bag with all the envelopes and all the money.
Don't worry about that. Nobody's gonna steal that here.
Okay.
That's a reference to The Godfather, where when they're getting the money back, the guy goes like, hey, if this was anyone else's wedding, basically we'd nick that bag of money. I even think they intentionally did that as a reference, sort of to that.
It is, yeah.
So the difference is, I pointed out on that episode, that's clear that they're actually hinting that, like, actually, on the lower level, they are just hoodlums and fucking street people who just go and do crime in the streets and do all sorts of shady shit. So there's that aspect. So the reason why I think that actually pairs quite well as a contrast, though, is also because of the time difference. It's the difference between the 1970s and what your notion of what they're getting up to is. And essentially, that's almost like, because you're seeing it from the perspective of the top level people, like Monty's talking about, that's going on. You just don't see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. It's that sort of thing, which, by the way, is inherent within organised crime of like, don't tell me what you did. You took care of it. No problem. In fact, if anything, that's better. Just eat the plate of shit without telling me, and then I don't have to deal with it. You know, we made him an offer he couldn't refuse type shit. Like, it's always something horrible. Whereas what you see on this one, it's actually the part I dislike the most about this film, believe it or not, which is, I know what you mean, Richard. If you want to talk about like literal on-screen violence, right? If you take the context and the psychological component out, it's not a particularly violent film. Like, by the way, even the blood is like ridiculous theatre fake blood. It's not even particularly realistic. Like, but I would just say this. I would say psychologically, though, it is very violent, but only psychologically. Like, if you understand the context of like the Joe Pesci character, I actually think he is one of the most horrifying characters to ever be put on screen. Like, if you think of the fact that, like, in many ways, he himself recapitulated this character many times on screen, this is the essence of it, though. Like, whatever he tries to do in this spiritual successor of Casino, so it's only ever playing to this particular sort of tune, as it were, because this is the ultimate nasty, vicious Joe Pesci that's just a horrible human being. And in some ways, by the way, it actually almost exists as like an avatar of the worst aspects of the mafia. Like, for example, like I was hinting at before, one thing I criticize this about The Godfather, I have to say it in this film, is there's not even an attempt at a moral compass in this film. Like, think about, like, I'll tell you the craziest actual cameo that I forgot existed, which is the cameo of the character of Krista from The Sopranos, being the guy who shoots in the foot.
That's me! I'm the Oklahoma kid! You fucking farm! Stage! Yahoo! You motherfucker! Come on!
Right, if you think about the logic the movie is building up, right? If this was The Godfather, you could have had the same few scenes. You could have had the Billy Bat scene. You could have had the scene with Am I Funny? You could have had all that, right? Because what that's establishing is that, look, right? Yeah, this is a very insecure character, but it's about hierarchy, isn't it? When you're below him on the hierarchy, of course, he actually gets to do what he wants. And then even if you seem like you're above, if we've moved beyond the days where you can riz me as a kid, maybe I can actually, like, fuck you over and kill you. And all, by the way, obviously, that's what the movie hinges on, is that that's the wrong person to kill anyway, right? But what doesn't make any sense, if you believe the grand lie of the noble Godfather and mafia that have a code and honor, is it would never make any sense for the Christopher character, though. All he does is just be a prick to that character and then murder him on the basis that guy gives like the most mild comeback.
Give us a couple of fucking steps here, Spider. You fucking bullshitter, you. Tell the truth, you're looking for sympathy. Is that it, sweetie?
Why don't you go fuck yourself, Tommy?
You know the thing in the UK, I've often referenced this before, there's a weird trope in the UK where you'll have like a group who's a guy who's the runt of the litter, Monty, and what happens is all he does is just get fucking wrecked, like verbally all the time. Everyone's just like, what a dickhead. He's the butt of every joke. But what you do famously, it's a fucked up gaslighting technique, is the person in the group always goes, here's the thing though, he gives as good as he gets, guys, and don't worry, he's going to get us back so bad one day. But the joke is, you know, he never will. That's the whole point of the dynamic in this relationship. Well, the whole point is, if the guy ever did one time turn around and say like one line back, like, what? Yeah, well, you're a fucking bitch or whatever, you'd just give it up, wouldn't you? You'd just go, all right, you get to win this one. Okay, well done. You know, hey, he got us back. The Pesci character can't even take that. He can't ever take any level of disrespect.
He shoots him in the foot, he tells him to go fuck himself. You're gonna let him get away with that? You're gonna let this fucking punk get away with that? What's the matter? What's the world coming to?
So I actually thought that was actually the most like, so that's the key of the film to me, is that character. Because here's the thing, you can't watch this film, which I think some naive people will do, and go, oh, imagine the whole film if Joe Pesci wasn't in it. It's like, Joe Pesci is just a worse version of all of them. Like, they're all, by the way, as Richard says, every character is a piece of shit. I'll even give a very brief aspect I think people miss about this film, which is actually the female aspect, Richard. If you watch The Godfather, we're supposed to believe those women know nothing about their criminal element. It's just don't tell me about it. That's okay. We're just a good Italian family. In this one, remember, they have her explicitly in the narration saying she's turned on by this. The danger and the thrill and the fact that, like, almost like it's sort of like get what you can, that she's vibing with that. She's not against it. She's actually going all in on that.
But still, I couldn't hurt him. How could I hurt him? I couldn't even bring myself to leave him. The truth was that no matter how bad I felt, I was still very attracted to him.
And I actually think that's an aspect that I'll just touch on finally, which I'll just say this. That's why this film is from 1990, guys. Think about it, right? We're just ending the 1980s, going into the 1990s. Well, the entire theme of Hollywood in the 1980s was, we're all yuppies, fuck the world, get what you can now. It's about fast culture and fashion and money. And make what money you can. Yeah, and everything, drugs, money, just get all the cash, credit cards, everything. So actually, in that sense, it's very much within sort of it's a movie of the time for me. It's actually very much within the sort of cultural mores. Like, I don't think that's such an alien concept back then. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, on that note, I'll add as well, I think one of the reasons why I really like this movie, and I think why it holds up, is it acknowledges, like, so we're watching this, and as you said, we're horrified, and yet we're not horrified, because if we were truly horrified, we turn the movie off.
Yeah.
But we're compelled. We're drawn in.
I mean, by the way, as you say,
in the same way that she's horny for it, we're horny for it.
As you say, there is no good character. It's not like we're going, okay, really Otto's cool though, but like Joe Pesci's a dick. Like, no, really Otto's a prick too. Like, by the way, he's cheating on his got white constantly. Like, yeah, he's doing everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I say it's the perfectly constructed movie, because on the first viewing, you don't understand in the moment, like, why is it started here in the timeline? Why is it when Billy Batts is in the fucking trunk of the car,
right,
and they lift it up, and they fucking kill him? Again, they kill him twice, and then obviously it's horrendous. It's just an explosion of violence in your eyes, and obviously the red lights from the car, beautifully fucking shot. I mean, what an opening to a fucking film! Like, it just grabs you by the fucking nuts. Like, it is crazy how good it is. And then obviously the line, for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Why is he saying that? Because obviously this isn't a good thing. This isn't something you aspire to. Killing this guy who we don't know in the trunk of a car in a horrifically violent way, where he's already fucked up and he gets stabbed and shot again. Why would you say that to this? Well, it serves to, it's a dual purpose. The reason it starts there is it's actually the moment it all goes wrong for all of the characters. That ultimately, if they weren't so enamored with themselves, if they did have just even a vague moral code, they could have all been okay. They could have had the money, the power, the girls, the drugs. They could have got away with it all. But obviously Tommy can't fucking rein himself in. His excesses get the better of him. It's what ultimately leads to his death, breaks the crew apart. Jimmy Conway becomes more hard-hearted, starts killing everyone. Ray Liotta goes out on his own. Henry starts doing more drugs, gets fucking got. It's there. It's that moment. But what it also does in that moment is, as a leap-off point, is it shows you, like, this is what it is to be a gangster. We're now going to do approximately 30 minutes of like a coming of age story, and you're going to feel good about it and go, oh, I got into some hijinks when I was younger. But if you notice structurally, what starts out as like running numbers and working a job on the side and holding an umbrella for the guy, next thing you know, he's burning cars. Next thing you know, he's selling contraband. Next thing you know, he's getting arrested. Next thing you know, he's mingling with actual killers. Next thing you know, he's being set up to commit violence crimes. All roads lead to this in organized crime. You're either about it or you fucking ain't, but nothing about it is glamorous. To convey all of that in what is a 2-minute scene is crazy. It is crazy. It is strong writing. It is strong visual storytelling. It's just amazing. I defy anyone in the world. First time you watch Goodfellas, try turning the movie off after that scene. Just try. You can't. It sucks you in. You are seduced, like all of the characters are, by the world of crime. It is a fucking masterpiece.
By the way, that opening scene as well, where he's like growing up with the mafia, is basically, even though it came 3 years later, it's basically like a short version of the film A Bronx Tale with De Niro, where he famously does the same thing, which was obviously parodied famously in The Simpsons, but like where he grows up and the dad's sort of like pushing back on the mafia involvement because will he become a mafioso? So essentially, since De Niro's in that as well, I'm almost certain he must have understood he was like playing with similar material there, just like expanding that, because you're right, that scene basically almost could be the beginning of that film. It's almost the same, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, if this was a TV series, you know, that's what would happen,
sure.
Right? You would spend like 3 or 4 episodes of, you know, Henry growing up, and we because obviously it's a movie and we're pressed for time. Although this is nearly 3 hours, and this is the fastest 3 hours of your life. It is.
Oh, it is. I have to say, I first of all, I was shocked when I saw the running time, and then secondly, though, when I rewatched it, though, I was like, oh, it is just really quick, though. Like, you never feel like it drags. Like, actually, it's a pretty pacey film. Like, each scene, there's nothing really drawn out like The Godfather, even though it's a long film. Actually, it's moving between scene, character. Also, another thing I want to bring up is notice how, as well, unlike, like I say, the attempt at the veneer of like a sheen of class or honor or accord amongst the gangsters in The Godfather, that doesn't exist from the beginning of this film. Like every single time, like one of the sort of gags of this film goes like this. So then someone in normal life said something totally reasonable, like, hey, you're late. So then here we are punching the fuck out of his face, like, oh, lol, you can be as late as long as they want. Like, it's that, but like 10 times over. Like, essentially, these people actually have like no idea of morality. Their notion is, because we can do it to you, we just can. We can just do whatever we want. And if, in fact, you actually even get the sense, which is actually another aspect of this film, in the same way as the Italians themselves in their family, it spreads to the whole family and it's everyone, and everyone on some level is complicit or taking part of the money or smuggling things in or even part of the crime syndicate. Similarly, and this implies, by the way, like you could actually make the case. It's funny that a lot of people think that Scorsese glamorized Italian Americans and sort of built a mythos. If anything, he's arguing against them being allowed to exist in America. He makes them like the ultimate parasites of your whole society that are nicking and robbing everything not nailed down and or fucking and or killing everyone. Like he actually makes them like a horrendous set of people to be sort of put upon your people.
And what's really telling is it's the scene after he gets arrested and, you know, gets released and says nothing. And what you realize in that moment is it's really fucking abnormal and borderline creepy that all of these mob people
they're sort of grooving him. Yeah, like it's a good thing that he did. Yeah, it's weird.
And they're all applauding him.
Hey, here he is.
Oh, you broke your cherry. But it's like this is what they do. They're indoctrinating a child into a corrupting adult world.
Yes.
Because that's what you need. You need the lifeblood. You need somebody to run all these errands. I mean, the whole pyramid falls apart if you don't have low level, you know, thugs to do your bidding.
Even though, Richard, this was never expressly or even inferred that this is what it was. I even thought to myself, is that part of the thing with the big Paulie gangster guy? Every person he knows is called Paul or Peter. Well, the joke is they're all fucking disposable, aren't they? The cons all go to prison and die anyway. So he doesn't call them all Petey and Paulie. Who gives a fuck at that point in time, right?
And I think, you know, that goes to show how disposable he is, because there is this attraction where, oh, you know, we get to live this lifestyle, we get to make all this money, we get the you know, the front tables at the club, right? I mean, imagine now, you know, a lot of this movie takes place in the 50s and 60s, and sure, they're in the Copacabana Club in New York, which was a real place, by the way.
Yeah.
I think we'll get to the sets and everything, but they did a very good job of representing the period. But, you know, they make it glamorous for the time, and you get these perks, right? It would be like, you know, being in the mafia today, but you get to go to the nicest clubs in New York City and get the nicest bottle service and be right in the front, and everybody's paying attention to you, and the women are all over you, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's the same thing, just a different era. But also at the same time, like, sure, you get these perks of like paying off the prison and being in the super nice version, just the hotel version of prison, basically. But you are still disposable at the end. And even though they're treating you on the surface like you're not, when when you make a mistake, Paulie's there giving you only $3,000 to like live the rest of your life. When, sure, he fucked up. Sure. I mean, he's lucky he didn't get killed in some ways for defying the bans on the drug trade that he was explicitly told not to. But they don't really have your back, right? They're not really there for you.
Well, that's explicitly said in the text repeatedly. Like, as soon as Ray Liotta goes to prison, I'm on my own in here, and it's like, when he goes to prison the first time and has the good experience,
yes,
because he's going in for a non-drug offense where everyone's terrified you're going to flip on them because of the long sentences they could give to drugs. Which, by the way, if you read a lot of true crime, many historians about the mafia say the mafia ended basically with the RICO Act and obviously the extended charges they could give for the distribution of heroin and cocaine, because you could take somebody, usually it had to be a murderer if you were going to get 25 to life put on you, right? But then if I sold a little bit of fucking coke, give you 25 years for that. A lot of people can't do that kind of time. I mean, if you're a hardcore psychopath killer, you're probably primed to go to prison. Who gives a fuck? I'll shank someone in the shower and have a fucking sandwich. I don't care. But if you're just a drug dealer, like 25 years inside Gen Pop ain't so good. And so this started making people flip. And this is why a lot of the mafia were the old school, especially, was super reticent about people who dealt drugs. They absolutely didn't support it. So Ray Liotta, when he goes in the first time, he starts dealing drugs and he thinks he's being slick. And of course, Big Paulie, Paul Savino, never been better. What a
he kills it in this one, yeah.
Yeah, just he doesn't even have to say anything.
He's the most generic casting ever in a gangster movie, basically. You'll know even though you won't know the name of the actor, you'll instantly know this guy the second you see him, everyone. I mean, as Richard says, by the way, spoiler, this whole thing basically also feels like a fucking pilot movie for The Sopranos. Like, whole movie's like that, basically.
They're all there. They're all there. As I said, I think the only one missing is like James Gandolfini. It's actually wild. But anyway, so he goes in and he's selling drugs, in front of him. And he thinks he's being slick, and then when he gets out, he slaps him and he goes, you did what you did when you were on the inside, but you're out now. Don't do that again. That stuff will turn your fucking mind into mush. And I'm not going to die in prison. Spoiler, he's going to die in prison. I believe they call that foreshadowing cinema, right? But anyway, but then when he goes away for the drug offense, he's like, I'm on my fucking own. And then when he gets out, he goes to his lifelong mentor, a guy who literally brought him into the life. And he says, look, I fucked up. I need your help. I've got no one. And he just gives him a wedge of money and says, now I've got to turn my back on you. And it's $3,200. And as, Henry Hill says, it wasn't even enough to pay for the casket at the funeral.
Now I've got to turn my back on you.
$3,200. That's what he gave me. $3,200 for a lifetime. Wasn't even enough to pay for the coffin.
And so what's great about this is, you think you're in a big family, a big fucking fraternity. No, you're not. Everyone's in it for themselves. Everyone's running game. Everyone's think about all the people that do the Lufthansa heist. And Jimmy Conway just fucking one by fucking one just kills him. Also in a great murderous montage equal to The Godfather.
Yeah, it's obviously inspired by The Godfather.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everything is, but that's what I love about it. Actually watching them back to back was sort of accidental genius in a way. But I mean, look, Jimmy Conway, Robert De Niro's character, he's just like, I'm going to take the risk of going to prison for this heist. And with everyone I kill, I get a bigger cut. So, yeah, why not? Fuck it. Maury's gone. There you go, Tommy. You bump him off. Stax Edwards, the getaway driver. To be fair, he did leave fingerprints on that truck, but who knows? It was a partial. They killed a man over a partial print. In the fucking 70s where that tech just wasn't there yet. So that's fine. They killed Stax Edwards, Samuel L. Jackson in a cameo role, and then one by one, he's just murdering all of his crew, all the people who helped him put this robbery together, including the guy who brought it to him in the fucking first place. By the way, killed and thrown into a fucking garbage truck. And it's like these people don't give a fuck about anything. It's money in their pockets and power and good times and whatever they want to fucking do. And you can work in service of them, but everyone in this family, everyone in this world, you're all expendable, and you better know it.
It's also just unending greed, because at least with Jimmy Conway, Robert De Niro's character, right, he pulls off this $6 million heist, effectively takes almost all the money for himself because he murders everyone else who helped him. And then he's still so greedy that he wants to run this cocaine business, which must be a drop in the bucket at this point.
Well, I love the contrast. And it's just super clever writing. Because remember, we're introduced to Jimmy Conway. The thing Jimmy Conway loved to do was steal. They used to call him Jimmy the Gent. He used to give it all away.
He'd walk in the door and everybody who worked the room just went wild. He'd give the doorman $100 just for opening the door. He'd shove hundreds in the pockets of the dealers and all the guys that ran the games. I mean, the bartender got $100 just for keeping the ice cubes cold.
Fast forward a few decades of the corrupting world of organized crime, he won't even give you your fucking share. He'll kill you to have your share that you earned in a scam you brought to him. Like that's what Jimmy the Gent. Jimmy the fucking Gent. It's too good, man. Like, the film is just fucking hilarious. It's also like, it's so darkly comic. That's the other aspect to this. The Godfather has no like comedic aspect. This absolutely does. But like super dark comedy. Maury with the wig. You go from the commercial of him advertising the wigs and jumping in the pool to Robert De Niro wrapping a phone cord around his neck and the wig coming off.
Call me now. And come in for a personalized fitting. Don't buy wigs that come off at the wrong time, Henry.
Fucking crazy. Stop it now, will you?
Listen, you got money for that fucking commercial, you know? Fucking commercial. You don't got my money?
Oh, no, by the way, all the comedy is obviously the joke. The gags are on the characters in the film. Like, yeah, it's like a dark comedy in the sense of like they get their comeuppance and like all the things they think won't happen to them. And if you're the one who fucks with it. Like, essentially, by the way, even though it's not in this film, I almost feel like the whole reason why fucking Pesci's character in Casino gets the end he does is almost like as a fucking actual fitting end for the character who did all the shit in this film. Like, he deserves it. At that point, you want to see him get fucking wrecked like that after what he's done to everyone else. No, there's a thing in this film where one of the best lines they drop in this film that people will miss because it just goes by quick because it's such a pacey film is really early on. He says, and then I learned the two greatest things in life: never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut.
You took your first pace like a man, and you learned the two greatest things in life.
Well, look at me.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Well, the point is, by the end, everyone's done that, haven't they? As you say, Rich, like the world had changed at that point. They weren't just on the old thing of like, you know, oh, only the getaway driver goes to prison or whatever. No, because of drugs, everyone goes to prison now. It's the whole purpose, basically, that RICO Act, wasn't it? It's like, get everyone, because if you were just loosely associated, you were part of their crime as well. There's also a thing, I actually think an angle people might miss as well is, it's funny that when you watch films when you're way older, one of the things I think you do get like a level of literacy for is when people are referencing other tropes and other things that when you watch it fresh, you won't get. So I'll give you an angle, actually, I think, on the Pesci character that people maybe miss, which is, think now, after all the films you've seen about gangsters, mobsters, or any sort of organised crime, a classic trope, Monty, everyone's seen this, you'll know it the second I say it, is where when you get taken before the big mob boss or the mafia guy or the guy who's, you know, the one who could order your death like that, what happens, remember, in every fucking Hollywood film is that guy always talks to you in a way where it's half serious, half jokey, and then what will happen is there'll be a moment where you make a joke back, don't you? And you can say something like, yeah, well, I guess you guys should have picked me up earlier. And there's that pause where there's the tension of like, will he just outright kill me for what I've just said? And the disrespect. But in Hollywood films, we all know the next beat is always like, he starts laughing, the henchmen start laughing, we're all laughing, and it's okay. It's okay. We've smoothed over that awkward moment. That's what it is, the Pesci character. That's why this whole thing's like, funny? Funny how? How am I funny? In what way am I funny?
How the fuck am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Tell me. Tell me what's funny.
Get the fuck out of here, Tommy.
You motherfucker! I almost had him. You stuttering prick, yeah.
And then that whole thing, like, they're setting up, by the way, so if you've seen films like I'm talking about, your assumption about the Billy Bat scene is never that he's going to kill him at the end. It's that he's either himself going to have to show that he was low at once on the hierarchy and just eat the plate of shit, or it's going to be that thing of like, hey, I'm just breaking your balls, or, you know, that sort of like, that aspect that you can come out when there's a likeness, whereas actually, like, the way he kills him is, like, super fucking violent, is super full on, and as we say in this scenario, by the way, it's also just incredibly indulgent. Like, there's no reason to do it. Like, mate, you actually gambled essentially all of your lives and futures on the fact you just couldn't handle this dickhead just saying something stupid to you. That's about it. Like,
Relax, will you? For crying out, what's got into you? I'm breaking your balls a little bit, that's all. I'm only kidding with you.
Sometimes you don't sound like you're kidding. You know, there's a lot of people around.
I mean, I'm only kidding with you. We're having a party. I mean, I just came home. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'm breaking your balls, and you're right away you're getting fucking fresh.
but I actually think that they were playing on that angle, because if you think about it, those scenes even go in the order I said. You have the scene with his friends where he's giving him a hard time at that, but then you do get the laugh at the end where he gets Henry get away with it. But then you have the scene with the Billy Bats guy where it just goes completely the opposite way.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
Motherfucking mutt! You fucking piece of shit!
Yeah. Come on. Let him go.
And there's no, like, funny, irreverent, like, I agree, Richard, it is
and
a comedy.
The spider scene as well, when he kills Spider as well.
No, same thing.
The exact same
Your logic would be, surely he gets to have one sort of, like, laugh back at the end.
Especially because he already shot Spider in the foot, so he already proved his dominance. And, like, there's no need to kill him after that, right? For saying, go fuck yourself. Like, it's not... You know, it's a
well, also,
insane
Jimmy Conway knows Tommy is a fucking psycho.
Sure.
Like, he knows him better than anyone else. And he's literally like, Tommy sat there seething, and he's going, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? What's the world coming to? And he's blah, 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 blah. That's what the world's coming to. I'm going to fucking murk this cunt over something super trivial. And you're just like, yeah, probably that's all avoidable. Like, if Jimmy Conway doesn't egg him on, and this is what I mean. It's like, it's this super macho world where you can't be seen to, like, lose any face at any time.
Yep.
And yet they're all talking about a hierarchy. A hierarchy everyone begrudgingly despises being in, evidently. Because it's like, Billy Bats is a made guy. Everyone knows Billy Bats is a made guy. He's just got out of prison, which, by the way, I mean, I love the fact that was... a meme that Frank Vincent carried on into the Sopranos as Phil Leotardo. But, you know, he's like, I just got back, I did 6 fucking years, you know, like, I'm just breaking some balls, just having a good time. He's just got out of prison and he's really fucking drunk. He hasn't had a drink in 6 years, probably. Like, he's breaking your balls. And you know he's made. And you know there's a hierarchy. And you know you don't fuck with made guys. So, literally... the craziest thing of the killing is he doesn't kill him after the insult. He leaves, he takes his date home, says, keep him here. He's had hours to cool down.
That's ridiculous, yeah.
Hours to just let it fucking slide. Comes back, nah, I'm having it. It locks the door on the way in and fucking beats him to death, nearly in tears as he's doing it, which is the ultimate sign of a maniac. If a guy is crying as he's hurting you, you're in deep trouble. So it's just unfathomable that, like, these people can't even exist within the rules they set. Yes. you made this world. This is the way it is, but nobody wants to do it. And that's what I mean. It's like, yeah, obviously with Tommy, super easy. Tommy DeVito, many people have said he is one of the biggest monsters ever committed to screen. It's true because there is no redeemable aspect to him, right? Like, but
I mean, mate, even that scene, especially if you know the context of what happens in the film, that scene where he has the audacity to be like, "No, this girl won't date me. She won't be seen alone with an Italian." It's like, she's right, you lunatic. She's nailed you. What are you talking about? You're a fucking lunatic. Also, by By the way, as a result, another thing they do in this film, look, it's a hackneyed trope, but to be fair, they were probably one of the first ones to do it, is the scene where the one redeeming scene, Richard, is where he's nice to his grandma or whatever, or his mom or whoever it is,
yeah,
you know.
Mother, mother,
and they make it seem like she's just sort of like, oh, silly, fucking, like, he's a lunatic, what are you talking? By the way, by the way, that's where it is obviously clearly a comedy too, Richard. He's going, I'll just borrow this giant fucking knife.
Yeah. Because I hit a deer, and I got it carved out. What's it called? The paw? And Jimmy
so
Conway said,
ridiculous.
I know.
Reminds me, I need this knife. I'm gonna take this. It's okay.
Okay, yeah.
I just need it for a
Bring
little
it
while.
back, though. You know.
Well, the poor thing, I hit him in his. We hit the deer in his paw. What do you call it?
The paw.
The paw.
his
The
foot.
hoof. The hoof got caught in that grill.
Oh.
I gotta hack it off.
What I love about that scene, actually, because remember, that's when we've come back. We've done an hour of the movie, right? We're back at the start, right? And then you've seen the rise of these monsters. You've seen what they've done to Billy Bats. We know how the story ends because it's the opening scene. And then we just have this lovely dinner with his mother. And she's lovely. That was actually Scorsese's real mother.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Really? That's
If you ever watch any
Yeah,
documentary stuff, she's like that in real life, literally. She's not even acting, bro, for real.
Yeah, no, she's not.
She's literally like that, yeah.
What's crazy, what I love about that scene and the reason why it feels so fucking natural and why it's such it's like a palate cleanser. We've had the story, the rise. That's it now. Now we're in the present. Shit's getting real now. But what I love about it is the brief was Martin Scorsese brought his mother onto set, right, and set up the kitchen, and he just said, right, you're having dinner with your ma. That's it. And he said to his mother, he said, just act like you're seeing me for a dinner, and she did. She just fucking improv the whole thing. She's not even an actor, you know what I mean? Like,
by the way, Monty, I don't know how much you see. Have you seen many like interviews with Martin Scorsese or documentaries, Monty?
No.
If you don't know, this is not a joke. He is like the Italian version of Woody Allen, bro. Like you'll get no, I think exactly, Richard.
Yeah.
Like his whole thing is like, hey, I'm doing talking really quickly, a lot of New York shit, and hey, his mom, like what, and boy, my bloody life, like it's actually that line right there is everyone wishes they'd nailed that. He is like the Italian Woody Allen. It's mental. It's mad, isn't it?
He's great. I mean, and like I say, everything about that scene, the way Henry Hill is not saying anything. He's kind of like weighing up what's going on. What are the results of that going to be?
Yep.
Tommy's just a maniac downplaying it.
By the way, that guy's still in the trunk the whole time, like.
Yeah.
Just dying for like 4 hours or something. Like fucking hell, bro.
It's little bits like the way De Niro, the way he does the ketchup by rolling.
Oh.
You ever seen someone do that?
Yeah.
To like make it come out with like centrifugal force.
Also, am I missing something? I thought because of
It's
all
crazy.
those memes online about people getting mad, like Italians getting mad at you doing the food, they actually put tomato ketchup on the pasta. What?
Well, I mean, he's Irish.
That's mental.
So,
That's mental. Okay, fair enough.
He's Irish.
Fucking hell, ketchup. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there's ketchup on an Italian table. There's a start there. But I mean, it's just everything about this movie. Like, but I'll ask you this as well. Like, these characters feel so fucking real.
Well, I mean,
so
part of that is
three-dimensional.
to your point about the dinner scene. A lot of when they were making this movie, a lot of it was improvisation that Scorsese did with the actors, and then from that improvisation, they actually altered the script, right? So it was a lot of the lines that they were coming up with that then got written into the script. So I mean, this was really just a bunch of Italian guys. Because remember, De Niro himself is Italian, even though he's playing an Irish guy in this movie. So it is, in very deliberately cast with a bunch of these people.
It was very nearly Al Pacino. Which I mean, Al Pacino playing an Irish guy is like kind of
that would be a bit weird.
That's mind blowing. But yeah, Pacino apparently turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast. And then I think the next guy they went to was John Malkovich.
Okay. That would have been a very interesting experience.
It would have stunk it up, man. Let's be real, like. But I mean, just while we're here and we're talking about De Niro's performance, because it's weird. Obviously, he gets all the props for like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and the Godfather Part 2, like all these great movies he's been in. King of Comedy. This is the one that not a lot of people talk about performance-wise. And I think it's just because it's so understated, and it's understated in an ensemble cast where he's the perfect contrast to Joe Pesci. Like, Joe Pesci is mile a minute talking, always joking. It's like, it's like the Simpsons joke about Poochie. If Poochie's on the screen, he has to be talking, and if Poochie's not on the screen, everyone's got to be asking, "Where's Poochie?" The movie's kind of like that with like Tommy DeVito. He's just too big, he's like he just eats up every fucking scene he's in. But like De Niro's performance is really understated by contrast, but I think that works for the character. He apparently did study. Jimmy Burke is the name of the real life criminal it's based on. And he's so ice cold. He's so cold and clinical. What I think the scene that really gives you his character is when Lorraine Bracco goes to buy the dresses, and he's just going, "In there, darling, help yourself, in there," and she doesn't know, and you don't know whether he's planning to have her killed or not. Is she paranoid? Would he do it? We know he would. We know he's capable of it. But we never find out because her instincts kick in. And
Over here? Right down there. No. It's right on there. Right on the corner.
it's just that scene where we're just going, in there, that whole build up. I love it. I think De Niro is wonderful in this movie. I think this is like potentially, because of its subtlety, it is a potential top 5 performance from a guy that is one of the pinnacles of acting.
By the way,
I think it's just the one that doesn't get the credit.
As I referenced earlier, I do also think that is a really interesting angle to shade into the film. The idea that like even the wives and the girlfriends sort of know what's going on and are sort of buying into it themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also accepting the risk in exchange for all the trinkets and toys and the extra lovely nice things you get in the short term now. Because normally what angle you would do, especially if you made a film like this today, is you would portray the women as like permanent victims and they were oppressed too and it was horrible what was done to them and they didn't even know. It's like, no, as you saw here, like some of these people are mothers and like have their own kids and they're part of their matriarchs of family. They know what's going on. Like they're not fucking completely deaf, dumb and blind, are they? Like that part, if anything, in The Godfather was perhaps actually a bit too mythologized. The idea that they were all just, oh, what's going on? I don't know. I know he has business that I don't know. But like everyone knew, everyone knows. Like, and also since we're supposed to be in the 90s now, it's more in your face, isn't it? It's not. It's like we're not even trying to keep this air of class. That we all know what the reality of the business is. That's what we're in. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I even think it's implied, and this is why the prison scene's quite good, the one where it's like the baller prison scene, because it's also implied within this world, by the way, despite what he says to his wife, you will go to prison eventually. That's just obvious. The question is just when and for what reason, and will you have a good reason?
Let me tell you something. Nobody goes to jail unless they want to, unless they make themselves get caught. They don't have things organized. I know what I'm doing. I got things organized with these guys.
Because that scene, it's funny that people will think to themselves that, like, I think a lot of Zoomers, if they get to that scene, are going to be like, what the fuck is this? Where they essentially have, like, their own, like, cooking session, actually with, like, classic style food inside prison.
Steak and lobsters being delivered.
That's why, in some ways, this movie almost should be, like, the last gangster movie. Because after this era, like you're saying about the drug laws, Richie, you could never have that in the modern day. Yeah, in the modern day, that probably could never exist now. But I could totally believe that at the end of the gangster period, that could exist in the right prison, with the right guard, with the right wing, with you have all the right connections. Like, yeah, maybe that is totally plausible. So I actually think that part's not even as ridiculous as people probably think.
No, these days it's just getting your cell wife to smuggle a mobile phone up their ass. That's as glamorous as it gets, unfortunately. But yeah, look, I while we're talking about the female characters in this movie, I will admit a lot of them quite deliberately blend into the background.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's, again, I don't think that's like Scorsese's a misogynist or, any of that nonsense. I think it's quite deliberate because that is how these people view women.
Yes.
It's a choice to show you that, they shelve their wives, they have a gumar, they say it quite openly, Friday nights for the girlfriends, Saturdays for the wives or whatever. And, but the contrast to that is Lorraine Bracco. Obviously, it's Henry Hill's wife. She's fucking stellar in this movie.
You got some nerve standing me up. Nobody does that to me. Who the hell do you think you are? Frankie Valli or some kind of big shot?
Slow down, all right? I forgot. I thought it was next week.
It was Friday. It was this Friday, and you agreed, so you're a liar.
I mean, she is probably when I look at the way her career went, it was great to see her have like the renaissance in The Sopranos, because she was kind of forgotten about in movies, and she did have a couple of duffers. She had some bad choices.
She did do that brilliant film Hackers, though. There was that.
Yeah, she wasn't.
She wasn't that
was
one.
Hackers.
So there was some good points in her career too.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, absolutely. But she was also in medicine.
Listen, I imagine, Richard, she might have a different opinion about me about how good her being in Hackers was. But you know, we're all have different opinions. And by the way, that's even something, you're right, Richard, that is also clearly explicitly said in The Sopranos, which is, remember that brilliant way phrase at The Sopranos, where basically when they sort of say like, why you sort of fucking around with his wife, he's like, hey, that's the mouth that kisses my kids goodnight. Like, his premise there is, I'm not going to fuck her face, am I? Like, if my wife for one thing, to have family, and then you have the women, because that's by the way, that even leads into what these guys are like. They actually are parasitic, bro. Like, their shit isn't like, oh, you know, let's be symbiotic. Like, we'll take our share and then you can survive, you know, and then we'll just no, like, think about the guy at the beginning of the film where after the Pesci guy's a complete prick to him because he has the audacity to go, are you ever going to pay this bill, basically, or am I just going to carry the cat? He then gets the guy himself to suggest, hey, maybe you could come into business with me, and they just strip mine his whole business and fuck him completely and leave him with all the debt and peace, you're out. So like, that is the vibe. Like, in this scenario, they're all fucking everyone in the movie over. Everyone. You fuck your girlfriend over, your wife over, your partners over, your friend, everyone you take everything you can. It's the premise.
The Sopranos episode where the guy who played the T-1000 in T2, I can't remember the name of the actor, that's a wonderful exploration.
It's the same concept, yeah.
Yeah,
one way he loses in like the poker game or whatever, and then he has to give him his
he
whole
loses in the
somewhere.
poker game, gets into debt. And obviously they have this thing VIG, which is interest. You got to pay it. So obviously, even their debt is designed that you never get out of debt. So you're permanently, in hawk to them, unless of course you are, you have that windfall. And so they go to his sports.
Robert Patrick, there you go.
Yeah, Robert Patrick, thank you. And they just bust it out, and they're saying to him, "You need to get another line of credit. You're going to give me these airline tickets. You're going to do all of this." And he's going, "But I'm done. I can't get any more credit." And he goes, "Well, you'll declare for bankruptcy then." And he's crying at the end, and he's like, "Why did you do it? Why did you let me in the game?" And he goes, "Well, you know, it's my nature.
It's the Scorpion the Frog. Yeah,
yeah." He literally says, "I knew you had this business now, didn't I?"
And by the way, notice, like I say, it's like this is why I'm so I'm sure they should admit themselves. I'm watching documentary stuff. The Sopranos clearly is both a love letter and a continuation of many of the themes and plot lines in this fucking film. In the same way, funnily enough, this film is referencing The Godfather.
David
like,
Chase
it's actually
it's
just a chase, just a line of people coming down from The Godfather to Sopranos to this to The Sopranos. It just is, obviously, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's also the incredible thing about this movie. I mean, the legacy of it, because there's the very obvious ones. Yes, there is no Sopranos without Goodfellas. I would go so far as to say I don't think you get prestige television, because what a lot of prestige television did, what it differed, why HBO was important as a channel, was because it wasn't going out as on like basic cable or whatever. They could show more adult themes because essentially you were buying in to watch it, and that's how like the American broadcast.
Bro, even that thing where they could just finally say fuck, like Monty, you don't know how jarring it was as a kid in the UK to be watching a film where a mobster goes like, "Hey, you freaking asshole!" Like. Roy's about to kill him with a gun. Why are you saying that? Like,
there was all the legendary ones, like when we used to watch dubs of movies.
Oh, Monty, the best ones ever were UK, where they would dub it themselves for TV, not the studio, so they wouldn't do it all classy. Like, what they would do for real, like he's saying, is you'd just have all of a sudden like some mega violent film. You'd just go, "Hey, motherfricker," and you'd be like, "What? Why is that in the film?"
My favorite was the scene in RoboCop where the guy shoots at him at the start and he's going, fuck me. They just dubbed that to "why me in the UK.
It's like existentially okay. I love it.
And then there was also Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon, where motherfucker was dubbed to Money Funster.
There you go. That's amazing, isn't it? I love it.
I'm gonna go get these money funsters. You're like, what the fuck is a money funster? So yeah, I mean, look, back to the point. I think Goodfellas really kickstarts this it was an acceptability for how graphic violence could be, how brutalist in your language you could be. I mean, like, it's really a lot of swearing in this movie. It might not be Scarface, but it's up there.
Well, it's also, I mean, to the point about The Sopranos that I think is interesting is that, so, we touched on the pacing and how, like, snappy this movie is earlier, because it's taking place from like in the 50s through the 80s, right? So we're dealing with a huge amount of time. And I think if you're creating The Sopranos, you're looking at this film and you're saying, okay, this was a great overview of this time period, but what if we actually slowed that way down and looked at, instead of using voiceovers to kind of narrate everything, what if we got into the really granular details of step by step how this affects people's lives? And so it was kind of The Sopranos was a deep, everyday, nuanced dive into this film, whereas this is kind of the fast and quick and dirty version, right? So you really see why The Sopranos was inspired by this and how it kind of took it into a different realm in terms of the exploration of these characters, which I think is really good.
By the way, you notice as well that, like, whereas in the modern day, especially famously with films where it's forced, like Blade Runner, narration is very maligned. The narration is brilliant in this film.
The narration is great.
Yeah, it's very well done as a tool.
And I think not only is the narration amazing in this, but it also, I think one of the most unexpected and unique aspects of this is it's not just Ray Liotta, it's Lorraine Bracco as well, right? So, I think what's awesome about this movie is that, sure, the women are treated like furniture a lot of the time, which is quite clearly deliberate, like we're saying. It's not the movie trying to minimize women or not being considerate of women. It's because that's the way the men are treating the women within the movie. So to have Lorraine Bracco's narration about her own inner feelings about all of this is really, really valuable and adds so much dimension. Like, when I was watching this, I was thinking, what if we didn't have her voice in this? And I think the movie is far, far worse if we don't have her narration as well.
I know there are women like my best friends who would have gotten out of there the minute their boyfriend gave them a gun to hide. But I didn't. I gotta admit the truth. It turned me on.
Yeah, well, I mean, just even the mini storyline in the middle. I mean, by the way, the chemistry between Liotta and Bracco is off the fucking charts. Yeah, I mean, they are doing some very intimate work. The scene where she's just on top of him when he wakes up and she's got the gun pointed at him. That is like
an iconic really shot as well.
Scene.
Waking up with that gun right in your face.
Yeah. And they are just electric together. It's just great.
Okay. Do you love her? Do you?
Karen.
And what I love about that little mini storyline is, right, so it's a mirroring. He says explicitly, when they beat up the postman when he's a kid, how could I ever go back after that, right? They commit this act of violence to show loyalty, fealty to me, and so I have to stay with them for good or ill. We know it's bullshit, but he meant it at the time, right? And he does the same ritual. When that guy inappropriately touches her, and he just says, "Get in the house." He gets the gun, just walks up to him. "You want some, fucko?" Nah, shut up. You're getting absolutely fucking wrecked.
By the way, the one actual beating in the film that is justified to some degree. That one I'm fine with. I'm cool with that one. Yeah, that one's legit. Yeah.
And obviously at that point, I mean, she's all in at that point. Like, I mean, for the same reason. What's interesting about that scene actually as well is, while I think again it kind of mirrors the Godfather, the James Caan beating that he doles out to the guy who puts his hands on his sister, where James Caan actually broke that guy's rib.
Oh wow! Okay.
because James Caan is a fucking animal.
What a beast.
Ray Liotta's mother had died of lung cancer. And so in this scene, he says, "You touch her again, I swear on my mother, you're dead." And then when he turns around, even though he's dispensed this beating, his face, he is absolutely incandescent. And it's because that's where he went to channel it. He just lost his mother. I swear on my mother, he's thinking about her. And
what do you want, fucko? You want some? Huh? Oh, hey! What are you doing?
I swear my fucking mother, if you touch her again, you're dead!
I mean, Ray Liotta in this film, I mean, obviously with the exception of his performance in Revolver.
I was going to say something like that. I was going to do a joke like, he didn't do many good films except until that brilliant Revolver film, Richard, In many ways, that's also an inadvertent spit roast parody, Monty, that he was in Revolver and now he's in this film, so we can see, the movies he's doing. Also, by the way,
him a lot better in this movie than when he was in
listen,
Revolver.
I thought the scene where he was naked in that stuff with the stuff from the sunbed going, fear me, was if I ever get the money,
underwear.
Listen, if we ever get Tom Newman and we get the budget to hire him again, I'll recreate that scene and have a whole thing of like, fear me. It's like me as he. By the way, one thing I want to say though is that's another thing I think they're also playing with the trope of there, which is notice every beating in this film isn't the normal Hollywood trope of like you hit someone with the side of a revolver and they're knocked out. Passed out, right? Put him over here. Instead, this is like just smashing people's faces in and breaking orbital bones and noses with fucking revolvers and fists. It's brutal. Like this, they actually give you a real sense of how fucking brutal the violence would be in this world.
Oh, and I mean, the credit to the sound mixing in every single violent scene in this. I don't know what they did, but the stabbing of Billy Batts.
Oh, it's gross, isn't it? You can hear it.
It is probably the most realistic sound outside of like maybe Psycho, and Hitchcock had a special dude come in for the sound in Psycho, and they were using like watermelons is what they used. So I'd love to know what they use. But even when he smashes the gun across his face, it you can hear its bone, but it's not like the comedic like. It's like it's got a metallic tone to it. It sounds like something metal hitting like it's echoing in the skull with each beat. It's really powerful, and it's such a small detail, but there's a weight and a heft to all of the violence where even if you look away, you still hear it. You still, oh fuck, that's rough. And I think that's why a lot of people think this movie is more violent than it is.
No, it's why I say I think they just created in your mind like theatre of the mind style almost, don't they? Because I know what you mean. It feels like it's mega violent, but I actually agree with you. As soon as you said it, I thought, actually, you don't see that many crazy images.
Nah,
it's mainly just psychological, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And that was the same with Psycho. People used to swear blind the shower scene.
Oh, there's fuck all in it. Yeah, if you ever go back, it's not bad at all. You can just play it without any sound and there'd be no issue. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and that's the importance of like audio mixing in violent movies, I think, because when it does have that... Because, look, we all know what a punch sounds like, and we all know in 90% of movies, it's like a pow, it's like a fucking comic noise. It's not fucking bone on bone, flesh on flesh, horrible, slapping, wet, gross, and so audio mixing is super important if you really want to portray realistic violence. But I think one of the reasons we've kind of accepted it as a movie trope is anyone who's encountered real life violence knows what it sounds like, knows what it feels like, and it's the permission. It's the permission for violence to be okay. And so I think that someone's probably written a wonderful scholarly article about audio and violence and why we do it the way we do it in movies. But you are not given that luxury here. You are not given grace here. You will listen to what it sounds like for a man to have his fucking face smashed apart with the butt of a gun.
I mean, not only just the audio and like the sound effects that they use, but also the soundtrack to this movie is incredibly good.
Scorsese did it. It's like, how we joked about, it was a fucking mixtape and not a film of 500 Days of Summer. This is Scorsese's mixtape, but it's all right.
No, here's the thing though. I mean, the area that they're both similar in, Scorsese and Tarantino, the difference is when they crib, they do it masterfully. Like they crib from they crib from like The Godfather or some soundtrack of a mega theater. They don't just like copy like a shitty thing and then do what they do in the modern films, like, hey, I'm doing this thing, guys. Were you a fan of that thing? Do you like when I'm doing the thing now? It's like, that's too obvious, you idiots. They actually do it with subtlety,
It's also very important to have a soundtrack that makes sense because this movie takes place over decades. So the soundtrack is actually integral to understanding what time period they're in. And, not only do they have what you would expect, the classics from the Great American Songbook, like those jazz numbers, but he also selects probably the most iconic renditions of some of these very
sure.
popular songs. So it's like, it's not just Beyond the Sea, it's the Bobby Darin Beyond the Sea, which is like the definitive version of Beyond the Sea, right? It's Dean Martin's Ain't That a Kick in the Head, which is like the definitive version of that song. And then they have the more decade, because some of these are timeless, right? But they are, Sinatra and the Great American Song.
And these are obviously the singers that literally the mafia people were involved with and were going to the shores of.
The Rat Pack and everything, so...
Yes.
But not only that, but you get the period pieces too, like Leader of the Pack from the Shangri-Las. I mean, the film ends with My Way, obviously a hugely famous, the song is made famous by Sinatra, but it's sung by Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols, which puts it in the 70s, 80s.
Which, by the way,
right?
that's Scorsese saying this is my punk take on
I know,
the
it's
crime
great,
classic.
isn't it?
Yeah, which I love, because you've got a Frank Sinatra classic, but it's like with a twist, and that's what Scorsese did with this crime movie. Even the song over the title scenes is thought about and considered and measured.
Right. But
it's
just
also perfection.
It's also when, we get into the 70s, it's Cream's Sunshine of Your Love. And I mean, these are really, if you know the
Absolute
history
banger, by the way, and way better than Smoke on the Water. Just saying. Right. Just putting that out there.
But also, I mean, that Cream and that era is very much associated with cocaine, right?
Yes.
And so if you know these things about the band and about the music at the time, Clapton, who's part of Cream, has a very famous song called Cocaine. And you can't help but think of that when you start hearing Cream. And so it really does, I think, unfold the eras that this is happening in really nicely. And it places you within those time periods. And, none of us lived through these time periods. But I know the music from these eras. And it is really, really cool to hear that progression and the songs that were selected, because I think it really is just excellently done. The soundtrack integration is amazing.
Just a couple more bits on it, because I've brought it up in front of me for order, because there's some other little interesting kind of components to it. So first of all, the use of the Tony Bennett rags to riches at the start when he gives that line, always wanted to be a gangster. Obviously ironic, because he doesn't really go from rags to riches, does he, at all? But it's setting it up for that. It makes you think that's what the story is going to be, but of course it isn't. We've just seen him murder Billy Bats in the car. There's the fucking bit with the helicopter at the end, which is obviously it's jump into the fire, which of course, we've done that with the drug dealing. What else? When he goes to his second girlfriend's house, not the girlfriend, but the other girlfriend that he does the cocaine with, and it plays "Gimme Shelter." Everything about this, fuck it. Like you say, the Atlantis. That's where the fucking thing. That's obviously when they kill Billy Bats, right? So, and they are sinking way down at that point. It is, bro, this is what I mean. It's like it might not be my number one film, but I think this is a perfect movie. I think legitimately I would really you'd have to twist my arm for me to find a flaw. Everything about this film: soundtrack, sound mixing, performances, script, pacing.
Also, I'll give you another angle, which is, how there are certain bands where if you like that band, I'll give you obvious examples, the Ramones or the Smiths. If you like that band, you're going to like everything they did. It's all the same vein. If you like this film and you haven't seen it, spoiler, you're going to love the film Casino. It's basically the spiritual sequel / remake of the film, isn't it? It's the same concept, just really expanded further.
Just to talk about Casino very briefly, I was around in 95. And I remember the reviews. I used to read Total Film magazine, and I was quite, obviously pretentious wanker. And what was interesting was by that point, Goodfellas had just been so critically acclaimed. It's preserved in the American Film Archive. It's in everyone's top 50 movies. I mean, by the way, when you see it in the top 50 and it's in the 40s, it's unbelievably low. It's a top 10 film for me, but whatever. What happened was Casino came out, and because it has some of the same hallmarks, people couldn't separate it as a companion piece.
Okay.
And it actually didn't get great reviews at the time, Casino,
That's
which
wild.
is wild to think about. It was, it was like a 3-star movie in some places, and people said like it retreads all the same beats of Goodfellas, which isn't true. It doesn't.
No, it's a very different story.
But it doesn't do it as well. And it was like, I remember thinking that and going, oh, that's a shame. But, Scorsese's, it's 5 years. I guess he's fallen off. It happens. I watched the movie. I'm like, this is fucking genius. This is almost the equal.
Like I say, if you like Goodfellas, you are definitely going to like Casino. Apparently, unless you're a weird reviewer in Total Film in 1995, apparently. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I think you'd be loving it.
Total Film. That was like, I don't even want to say it was a hipster opinion. It was like, it was just a mainstream opinion. It's like the general consensus was it's like Goodfellas, but not as good. And it's telling a very different story. Scorsese always said he did the pacing of Goodfellas the way he did it is because the movie is based on cocaine addiction. Mm-hmm. And he said he paced Casino in a very different way.
You know what? I've banged on him a lot, but fair play. Ebert gave both Goodfella and Casino both 4 stars out of 4. You know what, Ebert? Every now and then you did get it right. Every now and then.
He did.
Every now and then.
What terrifies me is me and Ebert are totally aligned on this movie. Which is like,
even though in all other contexts, only figuratively, I mean he's dead anyway, but it's not like I can do this. Figuratively, I just want him to have a Billy Bat / whoever Pesci's character in Casino ending type to it. After what you've done, that's what you deserve. Figuratively, of course. Dead now, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, the pacing of Casino is obviously very different. But I understand them as companion pieces. But it's a very different story. It's a story about excess and greed and hubris, and that isn't really what this movie is about.
And they give Pacino, they give De Niro a lot more to do in that film as well. Like as you say, for De Niro, he plays like actually one of his more forgettable characters because it's just like a very in the middle of the road performance in this one. In Casino, he's more of the central character.
To be fair as well, he gets Pesci again in that film, doesn't he?
Oh, he goes mad in that one.
Yeah,
like there's another thing. If you hate Joe Pesci in this film, you're gonna really hate him in Casino, bro. He has motherfuckers' heads in vices in that film. Like that one's wilding.
Out your skull for Charlie fucking M.
I know
it's crazy. I mean, listen, let's talk about Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
Obviously not an actor that I
thought you were just going to end the sentence there. It's not an actor, obviously, just some guy who knew.
I mean, maybe.
Have you seen the later Lethal Weapon film? That's all I'm saying, He's not a good... Here's the thing, Richie, he's a bit of a typecast actor, this guy,
Yeah, but, like, the peak is unreal.
It is. It's pretty good.
The peak is unreal.
Like, by the way, I don't know about you, but this film is a great example of it. This guy, the characters he plays in this film, Casino, actually, it's one of the only characters that can do the Joffrey from Game of Thrones on me, where I start to hate the actual actor, even though it's a fictional character. You know what I mean? Where you get lost in it and you just despise them so much, because I hate this character in this film. But that's how I know it's effective, though. That it's getting under my skin that much.
Well, but also, right, you have to think about the other... It's like... He's his brother in Raging Bull. He's great in that.
Yeah, he's mega in that one, And a very different character as well, completely different tone. He's like the non-violent character then, Obviously, by the way, the most ridiculous ever now, I never knew this because I was a kid when I saw it, but to now know that they cast him in Home Alone is actually mental. If you think now, after as an adult seeing all these films, why are you casting that? But when you just watch Home Alone, that's the only one you see, like, oh, he's a lovable guy, and he like, it's so mad he's in that.
That's the man. This is what I'm saying. It's like, how does a guy that does these broadly comedic parts, how does he go from being like these incredibly realistic, intimidating? By the way, he's a tiny man.
It's mad, isn't it? Yeah.
He's a manlet. He's like 5'6".
That's played for comedy in Home Alone as well.
Yeah. And yet when he wants to turn on the monster, he does it as well as anybody. And, Goodfellas, Casino, obviously to a lesser extent because he's more victimized by his own brother in Raging Bull. Loved him in The Irishman as well. I think he's got a part in Once Upon a Time in America. I think he plays a mobster there. It's just weird. But like, I think he got the Oscar for this, right? In Goodfellas. He got Best Supporting Actor.
Fair enough.
And you cannot argue with that. Like you absolutely cannot. This is an Oscar performance.
Oh no! Here's the way I also can frame it. Even if you don't like the character, just try and imagine a different actor playing that role. You'd be very hard pressed to cast anyone else that could do it. Because like I was saying, Richard, that's the key thing. Considering he is just actually like a fairly low level, just like fucking like not that much above a goon in the fucking mafia. He is a terrifying character. Like this character is more terrifying than some of the like fucking cartel bosses in like Sicario or some shit. You know what I mean? Like this guy, he's absolutely horrifying. What a monster.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you want to? I'm just looking at it now. I've just brought it up. This is deeply upsetting because I wanted to say, and I bet Joe Pesci in 1990, I bet he went up against some heavy hitters to win that Oscar.
Come on, it's going to be some absolute garbage. Come on, hit me with it. Come on, who is it?
Well, that's the joke.
Come on,
Andy Garcia got fucking nominated for Godfather Part 3.
For what? What? What?
I know.
Bro, listen.
That's blowing in my mind.
I was going to hold, like, you know, if you just say Andy Garcia in what film? Okay, he's done some good films. He's done some underrated ones, you know. Godfather Part 3? What?
Yeah.
How can that be?
Kill me. Yeah, so maybe it wasn't a great class of 1990. The other one, by the way, the other big name was Al Pacino in Dick Tracy, which hilariously he walked away from being in Goodfellas because he didn't want to get typecast as an Italian mobster, and then played Alphonse Big Boy Caprice in Dick Tracy with a prosthetic face.
Do you know what, Richard? Do you know what's sad? This is where this show has changed me as a person. It's radicalized me, some would say. Because you know what? If this was like 2 years ago, I'd probably stupidly say something now, Richard, like Dick Tracy. It's actually an underrated film, but I've learned what we call the Batman Returns, you know, principle, which is until I've rewatched it, I've got to hold back because I feel like that.
Go back.
I feel like that could be a Batman Returns scenario if I go watch that film, and I might really realize how shit it is. Because in my brain it was mega. Because again, another film where you know you had all the fucking Burger King and all that shit tying in and all. But I haven't watched it as an adult, so I can't say that one. I'm scared that it might be shit because it could be, couldn't it? It could be really shit. Let's be real.
It almost. I didn't even like it at the time, so I'm all right with it. I know it was. They were trying to Batman it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They were. Batman,
yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the end, because this is always controversial. How do you feel about the end of the movie? This is something when I was researching. This is the one area people criticize it for.
What do you mean? The idea that like it's just stuck in the witness protection scheme, and you know when you order the spaghetti, it's just egg noodles with ketchup on. Is that the angle you're about?
It ramps up. He gets arrested. He's in witness protection. Then also just in a really jarring way gets up out of the dock and starts monologuing to the camera, and then it has the scene where he's just in a regular house getting the newspaper and saying, I get to live the rest of my life as a schnook. And then it cuts to Joe Pesci just emptying a clip into the camera and then cut to titles.
I'm an average nobody. Get to live the rest of my life like a schnook.
So a lot of people have criticized it online and said it's almost like the movie which has been a roller coaster. It just runs out of steam at the end. I don't feel that way. Well, yes.
I guess I don't really understand that, because I think it just drives home a lot of the themes that we were talking about, which is that, you know, you do this lifestyle for the glamour and maybe, you know, the power and the weird erotic sexiness of the violence, right? But at the end of the day, you know, if you can't escape this life, and as soon as you do, you have nothing anymore. You have to, you know, it's very clearly laid out. You must go into the witness protection program or you will die, right? And so the only choices are this return to this banal mediocrity that you were trying to escape from the first place. And the people who are attracted to this lifestyle are inherently avoiding the normie lifestyle, right? And that, in a way, that's the worst kind of torture for them. And is this a fate worse than death is really the question that it's asking you. Like, you know, would Hill rather be violently murdered than live out his days in this fashion, right? And I think that's the question that's brought to it. And it's also, it's not only just the banality of it, it's that we know he doesn't have any money. That's why he's in this situation in the first place, right? That's why he has to go to Paulie and like beg him because his $60,000 of cocaine, which was all in the FBI raid. And I think it works really effectively because it is just a sudden end. It was going to be a sudden end no matter what. It was a sudden end at the end of a barrel of a gun, or it was a sudden end through the protection of the government and him, fearing for the rest of his life that they're going to find him.
Can you imagine if they just had the audacity to fucking cut to black?
Yeah. But I mean, I don't have an issue with the end of The Sopranos either for that same reason.
No,
right?
me neither.
I think it's fine.
I mean, that's also telegraphed. I couldn't believe it at the time that people were losing their shit over that. But also, so I think I found the criticism. I think I can do it. At the end, the movie doesn't need the subtitles that say, Paulie died in prison.
Oh, sure, yeah. That's a bit cringy.
It doesn't need that.
It's a bit hackneyed.
There you go.
I mean, you can look it up yourself is the thing, because these are real people. I think what's funny about this is actually knowing that the book was written and that Henry Hill later went on the fucking interview circuit. I mean, this guy was a celebrity.
By the way, I detest Henry Hill, right? Like, I want to make this abundantly clear. Like, Ray Liotta, right? Ray Liotta was gorgeous, thin, beautiful head of hair, charismatic. Henry Hill was not that. Also, Henry Hill was a fucking serial fantasist and almost certainly embellished many aspects of what he said in Wise Guy. Like, he's a rat, but not just any rat. This motherfucker got 50 people convicted. And like, I don't know if my moral compass is all fucked up, but like, can we agree that ratting is bad? Like, right? Like, loyalty is important as a trait.
Sure. Yeah.
And he fucking had none. He sent 50 of his own guys to prison. And then after the success of the book, because Pileggi obviously wrote it from his viewpoint, he outed himself. I think there was a story. I think he even turned up at the premiere.
I mean,
of Goodfellas.
If you guys are,
he's meant to be in witness protection.
Yeah, he was on like Howard Stern doing interviews. I mean, this guy was everywhere.
How did this guy not get got?
I have no idea. It's crazy, isn't it?
If it was the Mexican cartel, he would have been dead that day. Like, I will say that. It's probably a testament to how far the fucking mafia has faded. That this cunt could be like, we've got 50 people fucking banged up, right? And also as well, a lot of it was to do because he was the architect of the famous college basketball point shaving match fixing. So he got for that and ratted everyone out, and then ratted everyone else out for a bunch of other shit. Didn't just to fucking go on then. Like, I think you are meant to despise him at the end of the film. I don't know if that's just me knowing what I know about real life. But when he's like complaining, I get to live the rest of my life like a schnook. Yeah, you chose that. You didn't have to. You didn't have to. You could have listened to Paulie, could have not dealt drugs, could have not got caught. Like, what do you think was going to happen? Like, you're literally driving a car so fucked up on coke, there's a helicopter following you, and you think, well, that might be the
great scene, by the way, where you don't know whether it's his drug paranoia or they're actually following him.
Yeah, and it's like also as well, he takes those silencers over to fucking De Niro. And he goes, I can't use these. They don't fit. That shit's turning your mind into mush. And he's saying it like he's being the arsehole. It's like, no, you have just brought him a bunch of useless fucking silencers. You fucking moron. You're out of your mind on cocaine.
Honey, I only bought the damn guns because he wanted them and now he didn't want them.
What the fuck are these things? They don't fit. What's the matter with you? What do you want me to pay for this shit? I'm not paying for it.
I didn't say a thing. Jimmy was so pissed off, he didn't even say goodbye.
Stop with those fucking drugs. They're making your mind into mush.
And it's like, why would you still do a drug deal if there's a helicopter following you? Like, totally deserved to get got. And like I said, for me, a happier ending to the movie would have been if they just made up a fabricated aspect of the storyline of Henry Hill just getting shot in the fucking face. Maybe by Tommy coming back and he wasn't really dead the whole time. I don't know. I fucking hate Henry Hill.
I'm actually shocked, as you say, that people like critique the ending, because I actually thought the ending is what actually provides some level of balance to the plot of the film. Because think about it, right? Here's the part maybe people miss, is they go out of their way to say in this film, just like, by the way, the aforementioned A Bronx Tale is about exactly this premise. The underlying, like, metaphysics of the gangsters, Monty, is the notion that the normal man, the everyday man, is the sucker. He's the loser that goes to work and, you know, puts a toil in, and then they rob from him, and then, you know, you end up putting out anyway, you get the shitty gold watch at the end, and, you know, what was your whole life for? You didn't get all the glamour and the girls and the money and the drugs. But here's the problem. You don't either. You get them temporarily, and then you either get killed, go to prison, or in best case scenario is this ending, by the way. You get to go to witness protection and forever live as, get ready, the ultimate punishment, what you just said you didn't want to be, an invisible nobody everyman who never gets to be an individual or be in any way different. And in fact, the best thing you are going to have is the shitty egg noodles with the ketchup and reading a newspaper. Essentially, just not being dead is your prize. So in some ways, I would say, because the obvious angle people are going to put against Martin Scorsese here is you glamorized the mob. It's like, what's the glamour of the ending, bro? And what's the glamour of... Yeah, look at what happens to every character. Like, it doesn't work out for anyone pretty much. And I'd even say this. I've actually always thought, though, this is a flaw, though, with how people perceive movies. Because he did the same thing, in my opinion, with Wolf of Wall Street. By the way, same concept, Richard. A dickhead tell-all guy who ratted everyone out and got... By the way... I already assume, because I know these people as journalists, those people are habitual liars. They're all the guy with the story. The fish is getting bigger, and it's a different fish, there's a different guy, and then there was a celebrity there, and then none of that happened, you know, and you never even caught a fish in this story. They're all that guy. And then secondly, notice it's the same ending for both of them. On the one hand, you glamorize either violence and like criminal behavior, or drugs and like ripping people off and getting all the money from Wolf of Wall Street. And then the ending's always like, and then, you know, but you get caught in the end and you lose it all. But I will say that's even an aspect which I don't think he intentionally is trying to say, Scorsese, but I think it's fucked up. I've never understood that part of the morality. As a non-American, I've never understood, wait a minute, so you get to do loads of crimes and drugs and kill people, but at the end, if you grasp someone else, you get to live. Like, bro, like, you might not like some of those despotic old regimes in the Middle East and stuff thousands of years, but actually you probably should have your head cut off, mate. Like, what have you done that's redeeming? What? Because you're just a piece of shit selling other people. You get to live. I've never understood that logic. That's always been bizarre to me. But that is obviously like a key point of these films. Is like, at the end, it always does catch up with you. And at the end, there could almost be a scene. There isn't. There could almost be the stupid meme scene of like, you could just start the movie that way, like, you're probably wondering how I got here in prison. You can almost do that in these films, couldn't you? Like the way it ends.
You want to know what's really funny? Right. So when Wise Guys was being researched and put together, I think it was Pileggi's wife? Anyway, they created another screenplay at the same time.
Okay.
Which was a comedy about being in witness protection. It's called My Blue Heaven with Steve Martin and Rick Moranis. And it's
even that casting's mental as fuck. That's some 90s casting right there too, isn't it? What movie was this, 1992 or something? Give me a break.
It is fucking terrible. But basically,
is Dan Aykroyd in the background anywhere? What the fuck's his casting?
Where the last scene of Goodfellas, right? This is no joke now. I'm not making this up. This sounds like some fucking fan fiction theory. But the last scene of Goodfellas, where like, I get to live the rest of my life as a schnook, and he's in that white picket fence neighborhood. Mm-hmm. That's literally the first scene of My Blue Heaven. It's Steve Martin turning up in the car at the new neighborhood, and he's still all dressed like a gangster in a suit, and he's like, that movie is diabolically bad. And honestly, just as an interest, if you're really into the podcast, guys out there, I urge you to put yourself through this. Just watch Goodfellas and My Blue Heaven back to back as like a companion piece, and understand that Steve Martin is really Otter's character, and just deal with that. Put that in your...
By the way, the thing I was going to say as well that I'll just never understood is, if you actually look, you can't really actually lay this at the feet of Martin Scorsese that people glamorise those parts of the movies. Because as I say, the end of the literal plot he shows you is always that it doesn't work out and people, die or get fucked over. But I will say, somehow it doesn't work. Have you ever noticed that? Like, if you're watching the film, you yourself, if you've ever taken cocaine, think of all the cool scenes in movies where they're taking cocaine. Even though your brain should just go, but what happened at the end? Never mind that, shut up, you fucking... Why why are you party pooping? Give me some of that shit over here. Like, you yourself live in of the glamour of it like that. Somehow it doesn't, the cautionary tale aspect never works. At the end, you just go, yeah, but they're all plebs. I wouldn't get caught like that. I'm fucking smart, mate. You know?
It's why when, Scorsese wasn't lying when he said, I constructed it to be like cocaine.
Yes,
and
I mean,
cocaine
it feels
like that's a good angle. Yes.
Because it's the come down.
Yeah.
What is the high? What is the high without the come down? That's the reality. Anyone who's ever took a drug knows. It's like the speech from Withnell and I. You know, you are holding on to a balloon that will eventually deflate, and your only choice while you're taking drugs is take more to sort of maintain, or you've got to come down at some point.
The cocaine is the metaphor for the lifestyle, right? Which is that, and it's reflected very much in the pacing. And I think that's what's so great about this is you do get the manic, snappy pacing. It's very egocentric, right? It's all about talking to yourself, with the voiceover narration. It really does, and the power.
Well, remember the point I made in Sicario, which is also, again, if anyone doesn't have any experience of cocaine, you won't actually really get that film, because the whole point of that film as well is, of course, that violence is inherent with the world of cocaine. That's just, it makes perfect sense. That is the ambience you live in when that's the drug you're choosing. Yeah.
Well, also as well, I mean, even though it's not explicitly ever stated that Joe Pesci, I don't think you see Joe Pesci take cocaine in Goodfellas.
Oh, by the way, if you really read that now, he would just 24/7. It'd be like Darren Aronofsky, like that every 5 seconds, wouldn't it? That snap cut style or whatever.
But that's also, I mean, we lived in a better time. The 90s never gets its plaudits, but it's what I always loved about Al Pacino just coming out now in like 2022 or whatever it was in the interview, and he was like, I just want to say that my character in Heat was on coke the entire
It's like, no shit, bro, I know.
And it's like, we like you immediately go, yeah, of course you were. But I mean, like, it's not in the text. It's not in the text anywhere, but it's just brilliant. It's like, we get it, But I mean, because like obviously, if cocaine was a person, it would be Joe Pesci in this film. he is talking nonstop, bombastic, funny 1 minute, brutal the next. Yeah, that's coke. Yeah. So it's great. I mean, like, just everything about this movie, the themes, it gels really well thematically. Like, every character in the film is in service of a point. I think all of the storylines are pretty much tied up.
Oh, there's no filler, is there? It's actually quite also, considering it's a long film, it doesn't really have any like weird side plots. It's all just like the main plot, basically.
Yeah, well, you know how, like, in movies, sometimes there'll be, like, a storyline and it doesn't quite get... when you get to the end of your film, you go, I wonder what happened to that guy. You know what I mean? Well, there's none of that here. You know what happened to that guy. I mean, most of them are dead. It's what happened to that guy. But, everyone's... and as I said, everyone's storyline is in service of the broader point the movie is making. That, even the bit part characters that you see turn up, just as bodies in later scenes... Paul Sorvino, just, the same old guy cooking sausages. He was the one guy who had it all sussed, never talked on a phone. And he got. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to die in prison. He gets his worst.
Yep.
He gets his worst nightmare. Like, everyone's little arc, even bit part characters. Stax Edwards, Samuel L. Jackson's character, like, there's a racist line that Ray Liotta gives about, why they don't use, like, black getaway drivers. They use a black getaway driver. They end up killing Stax Edwards. There's, like, a lot of racial interplay in this movie, which we talked about.
Which, by the way, again, as we pointed out in a past episode, just like Jurassic Park, if you don't know, it's that, yes, before he became the leading man, Samuel L. Jackson is in every Hollywood movie you've ever seen. He's just in random the characters are just bizarre, isn't it? He's in like every film, I swear. It's crazy.
But like, we talked about it in the Godfather episode, where it was like, look, what ends up happening in the layer cake of American, the way the cities are built. It's like the immigrants are historically pitted against each other from the moment they arrive in the country, and they're ghettoized, and then they have this conflict, but also a commonality because of the shared experience of living in these ghettos and working these jobs and being mistreated by the broader aspects of American society. And yet,
their only way to access the glamorous life is through organized crime. Right.
Which is why, obviously, Monty, after having done this great job with the Italian Americans, Scorsese sat down and said, you know what? I actually really should also now tell the story of the Irish gangs of New York. And then I believe he did tell a brilliant story about that too, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, you know.
It was fantastic.
By the way, Scorsese is another guy, funnily enough, unlike that John Cal's whatever guy who's from Dog Day Afternoon who died after all those epic movies. If someone basically just popped up with a gun and killed Scorsese after, like, I don't know, fucking... Maybe after bringing out the dead, I think he'd have a much better rep than he does now, Richard. You know what I mean?
This is outrageous.
Listen, I'm saying, listen, if you kill him figuratively in Minecraft before Gangs of New York, but after bringing out the dead, this guy goes down within an...
You could just say he dies. No one has to kill him.
All right, okay, he just dies. But my point is, not only would his body of work look fucking sick, but we'd all get to do the great Kurt Cobain line. We'd go, imagine what he would have done. Whereas I'll just say to you instead, Richard, in many ways, he did do the Bill Hicks version of the Kurt Cobain thing, which is what if it's just fucking Jimi Hendrix doing Rocket Man at halftime Super Bowl shows with Elton John, which in some ways does describe the last 20 years of Martin Scorsese's career. A guy I had a lot of affection for. I had a lot of affection for him.
Here's what we are gonna do, right? We'll definitely include this in the episode, because listen, I hear this. Scorsese's, kind of whack now, and I've heard.
He has been like post 2000 Scorsese is.
Listen, I'll give him the odd one. Like Shutter Island's good. He's got some that are good, but he hasn't got any that reach the heights of these films, though. Come on.
Right. Well. No, but I mean, one of the things I always hate about art and about critique of art is that when somebody creates a masterpiece, if they never replicate that masterpiece later on in their career, everyone goes, oh, well, he peaked with that. And it's sad. They did this a lot with Hunter S. Thompson, which is why this is a point I want to make. Hunter S. Thompson, obviously, one of my favorite writers, hugely important. He's got like 3 books that are like essential reading that are preserved in that American library and all that stuff. He completely reinvented the way that people reported about politics and the way people could think about political like memoirs and stuff. And yet the narrative around Hunter S. Thompson is he ended up a sad, bald, cocaine freak who shot himself on his typewriter because he always wanted to copy Hemingway, a writer he could never come close to, which causes utter bullshit. One of the things I hate is there's a documentary called Gonzo, which has like Jan Wenner, the editor for Rolling Stone, Hunter's ex-wife, and they're all there going, oh yeah, the cocaine really got on top. It's fine if he's a fucking washed up addict at the end. He's defined an entire branch of literature, wrote a masterpiece fucking novel, and did one of the great investigative journalism. Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine if you never do any. If you get one, that's fucking insane. And this is what I hate about like movie critique. It's like, yes, did Scorsese ever do another Goodfellas? No. Of course not. Did he have a run where he did Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Color of Money, even Casino. Goodfellas, Casino? Like basically between 80 and 95. No, 76 is Taxi Driver. So between that, and look, we're forgetting about Mean Streets. Did he have like a 20-year run where every movie he touched was untouchable? That is insane.
I even think After Hours is underrated. It's not a bad film actually. If you like Twilight Zone type stuff, you're gonna like it. It's a fun little flick.
So here's the thing: when he turns up in the 2000 Gangs of New York, he's an absolute travesty, right? But like, and by the way, The Departed, super overrated.
What's the point? The Redundant, it should be called. I know exactly.
But Shutter Island,
that's a good
Wall
film.
Street.
I hate Wolf of Wall Street, but whatever.
Silence and Irishman are all fucking... If it was any other director, we'd be saying, well, look at this young stallion making all these movies. But we know he's old. We know we know he had that 20-year run. So instead, much like the reviews of Casino at the time, people are going, these films are bad. He's washed. I'm telling you, like Silence, by the way, is a hidden gem. Like,
I haven't seen that one. I'll have a look.
I haven't seen it either.
The performances in Silence, by the way, not people I would typically look to. I mean, everyone knows about Adam Driver now, but Andrew Garfield...
He's had some good performances, though. He's like underrated. Adam Driver, he can be good.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And like, even when he starred in like crappy movies, I think he elevates the material.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
That Hacksaw Ridge or whatever, So anyway... all of this is to say, Scorsese still fucking got it. He just doesn't have it to the same potency that he had it in the run between the 70s and the 90s. And why would you? Like, why would that happen to anyone? He's not a divine figure. Like, he's a man who's aging, and he's still putting out top tier shit in his 70s, his 80s. It's wild. And look, I think Killers of the Flower Moon is fucking overrated, and I think actually is a movie much like Oppenheimer. I'll probably never watch it again. Right? It's not a bad movie. I'll just never watch it again.
I'll give you a counterpoint then. Here's a counterpoint, Richard, which is, it's not just us doing that though, which is, here's the flaw that Scorsese, like every great actor and director, falls into, which is because they never ever do get it right at the beginning when you're doing all those classics you're talking about. And it's a bit like esports. Your reputation lags, but the difference is in esports, it lags 2 or 3 years. It lags 10 years plus in movies. So what they do eventually, here's the problem, Richard. Just like when everyone wanted eventually DiCaprio to win that Oscar, they just start nominating you for every film you do, mate. So eventually, like, they are trying to pretend like Killers of the Flower Moon is the new, fucking Goodfellas or something like. They're trying to make it seem. So the problem is, I do think they do give you that status of like you were the GOAT, so you're the GOAT every film, as it were. So I think that gasses you a bit, I think that gasses you a bit too much.
They're doing that for Scorsese because specifically they overlooked all of his films.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're trying to like make up for it on the back end. But here's my problem. The analogy.
You can't do
my analogy is it's actually why I despise the way they referee in American sports. If people don't know, in American sports, it's an unwritten rule. Like, of course, I'm going to miss your call, so don't worry. If you're the right star and you complain, I'll get you back on the other end. Essentially what I'm saying is, because I made the wrong call, I'll make another wrong call, but in your favor. And then one's won, which is, to me, it's like, you've just made 2 bad calls. But like in Hollywood, somehow they're like, no, we're righting the wrong. Even though, as we just said before, you end up with scenarios like, in coming down to the Oscar, will it be Nicolas Cage or fucking like Joe Pesci? What are you talking about? Why are any of these people nominated? Or will it be Andy Garcia representing Godfather Part 3 for the Academy? Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
This is. I mean, it's a very real thing. I mean, obviously, people said, like, I mean, for a long time, until he got the fucking best picture for Departed, which is a fucking it's a
mental, in it.
Was it best picture or best director? I think it was best director, actually. Sorry, my bad. But anyway, when he got the Oscar for Departed, it was like everybody knew it's just an apology from the Academy, because for years he was the best director not to have, not to have the.
That's why it's a meme that for so many years him and DiCaprio were doing it. It's like, we get it. You just really want to win. Like, well, if the 2 of us were to combine forces, then surely. It's like, what are you doing, guys? What are you doing here?
And it is wild, because, as I said, I know it's like what people are saying now, like, Scorsese, he's washed or whatever. Like, the movies I've just described in his washed phase.
Here's the thing. I never actually thought he was washed. My point is, though, like, if he had just died then, you would think he was just like the greatest director ever, you know.
It would be one of those things people would be crying about.
It would be like if Coppola died in 83 or something, whatever the fuck it would be. Like, some way he just had that godlike run of movie. You'd think this guy's unbeatable.
Well, I think my problem with Scorsese in these later films is that his worst impulses are not under control, and it's like everything has to be more and more extreme, and it gets to the point of absurdity. And you look at scenes like in Gangs of New York, where they're just like crawling around on the dirt with like the cannonballs flying around them, or Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street just like crawling around on the Quaaludes. I mean, it's just or like Leonardo DiCaprio like in the dark in The Aviator, like, with his pea jars. I'm like, dude, like, this is too much. You've gone too far. And he was
just a Twitch streamer.
Here's the problem, Richard. I think I've got the way to phrase it. That when I will contextually frame it, and this will just say everything about modern Scorsese versus old Scorsese. So old Scorsese, his muse is Robert De Niro, and he's sometimes casting Joe Pesci as interesting role characters. Then modern day, later Scorsese, his muse is Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's casting Jonah Hill in his films. So there you go. I think I'll just leave the framing at that. You know what, Joe Pesci, I talk shit on your acting skills, but compared to Jonah Hill, you're fucking Lawrence of Arabia, mate. You know what I mean? You're fucking unbelievable.
Killed it in Wolf of Wall
Street,
I mean,
literally,
obviously by this
I
standard,
despise Jonah Hill on every fucking level. I even wish in a fictional world I could enter fiction and go into Superbad and beat the fuck out of his character. Not for any even real reason, just despise him as an actor, and that's who he is as a real person, in my opinion. So
he's your Zoe Deschanel.
I hate him so badly. I hate him so much.
It's Jack Black for me. It's Jack Black for me. Jack Black is the irredeemable piece of shit. It's like seeing him doing all this garbage now, and people are like, "Ha, he's still the lovable uncle." When will you acknowledge he's that?
I love it.
When he's doing Minecraft, the fucking movie now. When will it end, guys? When will you see him for what he is? He ruined the King Kong.
With that said, I absolutely would cast Jonah Hill in a biopic about Jacob Wolf's career in esports, which might be the most mean-spirited thing I've ever said on this show. Actually,
it's just a total discount.
No, it's just unsaddle all time,
and
I know.
Here we are, like. We've arrived at this.
Anyway, Goodfellas worth a watch. What are your final thoughts?
So final thoughts for me. To make 2 points, I would say for the first, some people that watch this podcast might be like students of film and maybe want to be filmmakers or screenwriters, things like that. I'm sure there's a lot of media twats out there. Shout out one time to all the media twats. I'm a media twat. I will say this is if you want to study a perfect screenplay that is not just a masterclass of writing, but also a masterclass of adaptation, because remember, it's adapted from source material. This, and also direction, this is the movie. This is the movie. More than almost any other movie, probably, because this has visual flourishes, technical brilliance. The pacing is perfect. Every little detail, even though they improvise the dialogue in a lot of scenes, they do improv and then they go back and write it and make it text and then they'd react to it. Everything about this film is so perfectly structured. So I would say to any film students, if you're serious about learning your craft, this is the movie that you want to emulate. It's no coincidence that this influences, as I said, prestige TV. I think to some degree, Tarantino can only become a phenomenon because of a movie like this. And I think he is the logical continuation. Like, he sort of picks up the baton as Scorsese's about to drift into being washed. We get like mid-90s, Pulp Fiction, all of that stuff. Basically, I get it. Casino was great, but then obviously we're all on the Tarantino train for great direction. But anyway, the point just broadly about the movie is I think this is a timeless film. I mean, we are talking about a movie now that's obviously comes out in 1990. It's 3 decades old. At no point do you feel you are watching a movie that's a relic of a bygone era. I imagine some of the viewers being younger. I imagine there's been times that when we did the film noir arc, you were like, black and white again, is it? ADR dialogue, weird sound mixing, like that's not a very good shot. And you probably struggled with some of it. Same with like maybe watching even like The Godfather to a certain degree. I think it looks gorgeous, the movie, by the way, but I could also understand how someone raised on modern sensibilities could look at The Godfather and maybe think, it's a bit grainy, the print on the film and that shot, and the color palette's a little bit
it's very rich,
bleached.
the color.
Yeah. And so I could understand it, right? But like this movie, it's just a modern movie. You could release this now. It would not feel out of place in a cinema now. It absolutely would not. And this is what I mean. Like when you talk about the timelessness of film, sometimes the timelessness of film is about performance, or it's about script, or it's about story, or it's about like the invention of a particular type of camera shot, like Citizen Kane, like and things like this. This is just, it's all of that. It's all of that, and it feels modern and fresh, even coming to it now, having seen it so many times, could recite it word for word. Every time I watch this movie, it is a delight. it is a delight. It will never go off. I mean, people don't do this now, but back in the days when you used to channel hop, if this was on late night on fucking Channel 4, you watch it. You watch it all. You never turn this movie off. It is the ultimate. It shouldn't be comfort food because the story's fucking awful and horrible and sad and depressing and brutal and violent, but it's just told so well. As I said, for me, this is like a top 5 movie for me of all time. That's higher up than a lot of critics would put it, but I think it's Scorsese's masterpiece. I think it's a masterpiece of modern cinema, and I think this is the one that will live, 100 years from now. This is the one people will come back to.
I agree on the last point. I'll echo that. I also think it is probably the best. This and Casino, I think, are the 2 best Scorsese movies. I think he is a great director. He had his run. The 90s obviously was his period. He's very good in the late 70s too. I would say the thing about this film is the only angle I could really see that someone might dislike, because I actually think, by the way, probably one of the best aspects of this film is the pacing. Even though it's a long film, it never feels like it's snappy. It's keeping you going from scene to scene. Like I said, there's very little filler. They're actually not even going out their way to introduce many side characters. There's actually quite a small cast of people, and it's just rotating the main ones that need to be in the story. I also think, by the way, the tone, it nails it. Like I contrasted at the beginning of the episode, the difference between what you were trying to do in a 70s film like The Godfather versus what you're doing in the action-packed 90s where everything's more in your face and loud and brash. Also, I agree with Richard. It's not a scenario where we're recommending you some great film that you have to understand the context of cinema back then and what the shot. You don't have to know any of that shit. You can just watch this. You'll just be able to watch it. One thing I would say is the only angle I could see someone might dislike is, like I said, I don't like the character that Joe Pesci plays. I don't like the violence of some of the things you see on the screen. But that's a sentiment. I just want to make a very quick point, which is that is one thing that is so absent in the modern day of online shit that is mental. If people don't know, this is actually insane. You might have seen this recently on Dom's Twitter, believe it or not, Monty, which is if T1, the best, famous, most prestigious Korean team, loses in League of Legends, are you ready? Their fans downvote the Reddit thread of their loss, as if what you were doing when you downvoted wasn't saying this is useless content. Nothing. You're saying I disagree with the sentiment that they lost the game, which is that part is such an alien concept to me. I almost can't comprehend it. So if you're someone like that, where essentially the violence is going to be too brutal for you and that'll put you off, that would be the only part I could see you disliking about this film. But as I said earlier, I actually think it's not just senseless violence. That's just a pornography of violence. It's to show the stakes that this world takes place in, and actually, quite frankly, it shows you how horrible it would be. And essentially, by the way, here's one of the best details about this film. Even though people will always present it as it glamorizes the mobster life, first of all, I told you it just doesn't if you look at the story. And then secondly, I would just ask you this question if you believe it does. Which character would you like to be in this film? Would you like to be Hank Hill? Would you like to be Joe Pesci? You wouldn't like to be any of them. I mean, the joke in this film is you can't even be in the same room with Joe Pesci. He might at any moment just kill you for no reason. It's actually shit to be these guys. So I actually think, even if that sentiment initially puts you off, stick with it, because essentially that's sort of the medicine part of the film. You have to have that part in order to get the rest of the message. I think it's a great film. Yeah,
I'm Jimmy 2 times.
I wouldn't have it top
go
5.
Get the papers.
I wouldn't put it quite that high, but I do think it's one of the best films of all time. It's definitely a must-watch. You can't really go wrong.
And also, I mean, still culturally relevant. We talked about how Jurassic Park, there are still references that everybody makes to this day. We talked in The Godfather about, you can even see memes that pop up, look how they massacred my boy, which has been very popular recently. And another meme comes from this movie that's been very popular, which is just Ray Liotta, laughing hysterically at the table in that scene where, Joe Pesci is talking.
The Joe Pesci last shot just before he gets murked. Yeah. I've seen that one used as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys have probably seen, if you hadn't watched this movie before, I'm sure you've seen the memes online, and this is where it comes from. So these films, many, many years later, continue to be culturally relevant and cultural touchstones today. So, and that will continue because obviously Casablanca, which is the oldest of all these movies, well, that's still going to be relevant too, because, Play It Sam and all the other lines from that film are incredible.
I mean, that one's so iconic, even as a line that no one ever said in the film that people believe is iconic about the film. So that's sort of meta-contextual.
Nobody ever says play it again, Sam.
Did.
She says, play it, Sam, play as time goes by, right? But in any case, we'll be back with Ebert's pick next week of Casablanca, and we'll see you then.